Hello there and welcome to Locked In Conversations. I'm Charlotte Gibson and today I'm joined by Claire Redding, Senior Scheme Design Consultant. So my first question to you, Claire, is what on earth is an EVP?
Employee value proposition in its most basic form is basically what an employee receives in exchange for their employment, their skill set. Be used and typically is used as a recruitment tool. So it will typically be used to onboard an employee and explain this is everything that you receive for working for us. So it should include elements of compensation, benefits, learning and development, wider career, culture, so what it means to actually work for the business, and also most recently diversity, equity and inclusion. As well as being a recruitment and retention tool, can also be seen as a branding tool. It's a very good way for employers to quite easily and clearly communicate what it means to work for them and what you receive working for them. So an internal branding tool.
So regardless of what terms you kind of coin it, I think we can all agree that having some kind of strategy in place for your benefits, reward, compensation, learning, development is really important to underpin how you recruit and retain your talent. But what are the limitations of an EVP when you're trying to think of your people strategy?
I think often the main downfall of an EVP is that it can be seen by some as just a tick box exercise. So it's something that's on paper to show off during that recruitment process, and then maybe it's forgotten about. I think really what needs to be done to improve that is to make it much more individual and personalised to that individual employee. I think often employee value propositions can be a one-size-fits-all, and that's not necessarily correct. We know that you can't put people into a one-size-fits-all box. We're all different, we're all individual, and so the value proposition should actually reflect that. So how can we ensure that an employee knows what the value proposition means to them, how they can relate to it, but then also how can they access and utilise it through whether it be learning, development tools, benefits and so on. The market, in terms of flexible benefits and reward has to change. This year alone, we've seen such advances in technology because of COVID. And I think that the reward industry has to keep up with that, because if it doesn't, it will just fall behind. Prior to COVID, the workforce had changed massively, and even over the last 10 years, let's say, because younger employees coming in have different expectations. They expect more from their employer. It's no longer just, your salary, your pension, and your bonus. It's lots more. It's the benefits on offer. How flexible are they? The systems that they use. We're now in the consumer world. We're so accustomed to Amazon. Click of a button and you can receive something. And maybe benefits aren't quite there, but I think they are slowly catching up. I have clients asking me all the time, what are market leaders doing and how can we catch up? But asking that question, it's not a novelty anymore. It has to be done. Change has to be made in order to keep up with where the market is going. Firstly, understand your employees. So, you'll have lots of data on them, demographics. It's more than just demographics, because you can't say somebody who is 26 will think and feel this way, but it is important to understand those demographics and who your employees are, to make sure you understand who you're communicating to, first of all. Another good thing is to create almost a persona, so you can try and sort of identify and target employees in a way that isn't grouping them, but maybe groups them via interests and different personality types. And also, just make sure that all your communication is clear. It's not unusual for companies to have an intranet site with lots of different links and additional sites. I would just say make sure that you can group it all together in one easily accessible place, where it's very easy for an individual to identify, right, this is part of the value proposition and this falls under my career, or this falls under diversity, equity and inclusion. So I would say those are three tips that you could utilise and roll out quite easily. I completely understand that for some this may seem quite daunting, and it may seem something that's resource heavy, and perhaps they don't have the resource in terms of the team or funding. In most cases, companies are already doing this. It's just about bringing it together, tying it together under that strategy. So my top tips would be, first of all, think about your employees' journeys with you. So a strong value proposition, individual value proposition, should support your employees throughout each individual life stage with you. So that should be from when they join, throughout, like I mentioned, promotions, life events that they might be experiencing outside of work, right the way through to, when they do eventually decide to either move on or retire. So just think about each of those elements and what you're already doing to support employees in those areas, and how can that be brought together under a strategy, under one umbrella. Secondly, I'd say really important, but make sure that you're communicating internally. Often, who looks after the benefits doesn't look after the pay, for example. Learning and development typically falls under HR, but will sit with a different team. So it's not unusual to find that actually each of these areas of HR are working towards their own strategy, their own goals and objectives, but it's just not communicated or tied together. So I would say make sure that you're speaking with the people team. There might be really interesting strategies going on that you're just not aware of, but they fall under that value proposition and can be brought together. And finally, I'd say make it personal. We spoke about employees wanting to understand what it means to them. So just to relay, employees should know how it supports them personally. It can't just be words on paper. It can't just be something that's shown to them when they join the company and then put in a drawer and forgotten about. It really, really does need to be individual to them. And hopefully by making it individual like that, by showing them that you support them in different areas, not just onboarding them, will create that connection between you and the individual employee, and hopefully result in a long and happy career for your employee.
Thank you very much, Claire. This has been Locked In Conversations. See you next time.